Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're going to unpack an ancient text to reveal what is basically a fascinating socio-economic loophole from the ancient world. Just imagine a society where the ultimate spiritual achievements, salvation, heavenly rewards, absolute purification, are entirely locked behind a massive paywall. That's exactly the world described in the text we're analyzing today. It was a reality where divine favor literally felt like a luxury good. But, as we're going to see, an incredible workaround was established. We're going to explore exactly how everyday people bypassed a totally impossible system. So we start our journey directly with this brilliant question posed by a legendary figure named Bhishma to the great sage Pulastya. And this interaction is what kicks off our entire narrative. Now, Bhishma isn't just anybody, right? He's a highly revered, immensely powerful warrior statesman, so his high status makes this admission of doubt incredibly powerful. He essentially leans in and asks, what is the actual tangible merit for someone who wanders the whole earth visiting sacred shrines? It's a remarkably simple question, but it triggers a profound, sprawling explanation from Pulastya that fundamentally challenges the rigid status quo of their time. Which brings us to the absolute core problem we're exploring today. How did everyday people achieve spiritual success when the system was so heavily rigged for the wealthy? We're talking about a time when securing your place in the afterlife or wiping your spiritual slate clean required immense resources. Think armies of priests, massive amounts of gold, and weeks of elaborate preparation. If you were poor, were you just out of luck? Well, let's find out exactly how the ancient world solved this incredibly complex social puzzle.
Section 1. The cost of ancient salvation, or as I like to call it, the VIP access of the ancient world.
Now, there's just a massive contrast at play here. On one side, you've got the traditional path to spiritual merit, grand sacrifices. The text explicitly spells it out. These rituals required kings, massive amounts of diverse and expensive materials, powerful allies, and basically unimaginable prosperity. They were highly exclusive events. But then, the text introduces Tirthas, and suddenly, the requirements drop to virtually zero. You can be completely without wealth. You can have no allies, act entirely on your own, be absolutely destitute of means, and lack any social standing whatsoever. It is a stunning juxtaposition between the exorbitant gate-kept cost of grand royal sacrifices and the beautiful, sweeping accessibility of the Tirthas.
So the crucial point here is understanding what a Tirtha actually represents in this ancient text. It wasn't just a physical spot on a map, like a riverbank or a mountain peak. It functioned as the ultimate spiritual equalizer. A Tirtha granted the exact same spiritual merit, and sometimes significantly more, as those impossible, hyper-expensive royal sacrifices. But it offered it to absolutely anyone, regardless of their financial background. It systematically democratized salvation, totally taking it out of the hands of the elite and placing it right under the feet of the common traveler.
Actually, scratch that. The text takes it a step further, making this incredibly radical claim. Sojourns and Tirthas are even superior to sacrifices. Pulastya explains that a poor person who simply travels to a Tirtha, fasts for 3 nights, and can't even afford to give away traditional offerings like gold or cows, actually acquires a merit that you cannot get even by performing the most lavish, heavily funded events like the insanely complex Royal Agnishtoma ritual. I mean, think about the social implications of that. A poor person's solitary journey practically beats a king's grand, highly orchestrated ritual.
Section 2. Pushkara, the ultimate destination.
100,000 millions. Try to wrap your head around that scale for a second. The text states that during the 2 twilights and midday, there's the spiritual presence of 100,000 millions of Tirthas, all concentrated inside this single location of Pushkara. It's described with immense cosmic significance as the absolute foremost of all Tirthas, a place where celestials, deities, and sages historically attained godhood. The aura of this place is so profoundly powerful that, according to the text, even just mentally thinking of Pushkara actively cleanses a person of their accumulated sins. No way, right?
But, of course, there's a catch. It is certainly not a simple vacation. The text emphasizes this point heavily and repeatedly. It might be free from monetary cost, but it demands an immense physical and mental toll. The source tells us that at Pushkara, spiritual seekers survive on a highly regulated, super meager diet of just vegetables, roots, and fruits. It explicitly notes that it's exceedingly difficult to travel there, difficult to undergo the severe ascetic austerities required once you arrive, and simply difficult to survive the elements. The currency isn't gold anymore. The currency is human endurance.
Section 3. A tour of sacred sites. Let's map out the ancient itinerary.
So the text maps out exactly how different geographical locations corresponded directly to those VIP-level spiritual rewards we talked about earlier. For example, simply traveling to and staying at Jambu Marga yields the precise merit of the legendary horse sacrifice, which was an undertaking normally reserved only for the greatest emperors. Bathing in the celebrated Narmanada River and offering basic oblations grants the reward of ascending directly to heaven. Going to the sacred site of Prabhasa? That offers merit even greater than the most complex royal sacrifices. The physical landscape itself is transformed into this vast, highly accessible spiritual treasury just waiting to be walked.
And these weren't just dry locations on a map. They were places of vivid sensory storytelling, wondrous mythology, and deep, enchanting mystery. At Dhuravati, travelers reportedly found physical coins miraculously marked with lotuses, and actual blooming lotuses bearing the divine mark of a trident. At Vimala, the pristine waters were filled with fish gleaming brightly in golden and silver hues. And at Vadavaya, after immense asceticism spanning 1,000 years, a deity was said to grant wishes and then vanish right before the seeker's eyes, flashing out of existence like lightning in the storm clouds. It really makes the physical journey feel incredibly vibrant, dangerous, and alive.
Section 4. The miracle at Rudrakoti and the multiplication of Mahadeva.
10 million. According to the source, this is the staggering number of seekers who all assembled at the sacred site of Rudrakoti. 10 million munis, or ascetic sages. And at first, they were filled with this great overflowing joy at the prospect of beholding the deity Mahadeva. But then human nature, rather comically, kicks in. Instead of peaceful, quiet contemplation, these 10 million highly spiritual sages start aggressively competing. They begin shouting at each other, every single one of them demanding and pushing, yelling, "I will first behold the god," "No, I will first behold the god." Even among the most disciplined, ascetic individuals, this massive, noisy ego dispute broke out over who deserved to be first in line for salvation.
To prevent a massive physical brawl, the Lord of Yoga provided this absolutely mind-bending solution. Using his divine power, he instantly multiplied himself into 10 million distinct forms, standing directly in front of every single sage simultaneously. Because of this miraculous event, every single one of those 10 million sages walked away entirely satisfied, each thinking, "I have seen him first." It's this wonderful, deeply philosophical moment in the text that highlights how the divine can provide deeply individualized, perfectly personal attention to everyone simultaneously, completely neutralizing human ego, jealousy, and fierce competition all in one stroke.
Finally, Section 5. The true inner journey and the prerequisites of pilgrimage.
Now, here is the real kicker. The text explicitly states that walking to these places is entirely useless unless you've mastered a rigorous checklist of internal self-control. You must have your hands, feet, and mind under absolute unwavering control. You must be completely free from all pride and anger, which is incredibly difficult, by the way. You have to eat light and actively cease accepting any gifts or favors from others. And perhaps most profoundly, you must regard all creatures as your own self. Radical empathy and severe self-denial are totally non-negotiable. If you carry your ego, your resentment, or your greed with you to a Tirtha, the text implies your physical journey was a waste. You won't get any of the promised spiritual merits.
So I really want to leave you with this thought to ponder. We've seen how Tirthas provided a brilliant, highly democratic alternative to wealthy, exclusive sacrifices. But if cashing in on that ultimate spiritual reward requires absolute, unwavering mastery over your own pride, anger, and desires, and demands that you see every single living creature as yourself, is the physical journey actually just a mirror for the mind? It really challenges you to consider if the truest, most difficult pilgrimage happens entirely within. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey through the ancient text. Keep learning and keep asking great questions.